All right, up next is a battle in the UFC's middleweight division between top 15 ranked fighters and the number 9 ranked former welterweight and welterweight title challenger in Darren the Gorilla Till, who makes his return to the UFC, coming in with a record of 18 victories, 4 defeats, and 1 no contest, going up against the former KSW world champion, former KSW two-weight world champion, and the number 13 ranked Dricus Du Plessis, who comes into the fight with a record of 17 victories and 2 defeats. This is a really, really solid fight here. Du Plessis versus Till is going to be a barn burner for as long as it lasts. Whether it goes 15 minutes, if it goes the full 15, we're probably going to get one of the best fights of the year, or it's going to be, a really technical fight where neither guy really commits on anything. But with a guy like Du Plessis, I can't really see a fight where he doesn't commit. Even if he's getting caught, he's still going to be committing to his shots. He's still going to be coming in. He's still going to be stepping into range, and he's still going to be looking to bomb away on you. I mean, the guy has big power. He's got wrestling and grappling ability too. We saw it in the UFC a little bit. He almost locked up Trevin Giles in that guillotine choke with that shin across the belly with the opposite foot on the foot on the opposite hip over the top. We've seen his grappling ability in some of his other fights. You look at his overall record, he's 17-2 is Du Plessis. But when you look at the overall wins, he's got 16 out of 17 wins coming by way of finish. 7 KO TKOs and 9 submissions. Out of his 2 losses, those are finishes as well. 1 KO, 1 submission. He's only had 1 fight go to decision, and that was that win in his last fight against Brad Tavares, in a fight where he looked outgunned early on. Like, Tavares definitely won the first round. He caught him with a left hook. He was catching him with an overhand. He hurt him at the end of the first round, I believe, did Du Plessis with a left hook. As he stepped into range, he switched southpaw and banged the left hook, if I remember correctly. And it knocked Tavares off balance, and then, he closed the distance again. But he gets hurt in a lot of his fights. Even the knockout victory over Trevin Giles, I mean, he got caught, he got stunned. His legs went out from under him. He went up against the cage. Giles kind of thought he had him hurt. He stopped for a second, and then Du Plessis launched a right hand in on him, darted right in, and knocked him out cold. Du Plessis, it does not have the best cardio, but even when he looks tired, he can still bomb away on you. He can still land his power. He can land his kicks. Left kick from southpaw, left kick to the body, low kicks, high kicks, mixing it up, switching southpaw, landing the straight left hand, the right hand behind it. A lot of the times when he comes in with those darting combinations, which is mainly all of his combinations because he throws everything with like 100% power, he's going to dart in and kind of square off his stance. So he'll go straight left, switch, straight right, straight left, and he'll dart his way in with those long punches. It's kind of like a Paddy Pimblett, which I talked about on the UFC 282 preview show with Mike Finch a couple weeks back. If you haven't checked that out, after you're done watching this podcast, go back and watch the UFC 282 preview show with Mike Finch on my YouTube channel and on the podcast, wherever you're listening to this right now. Excuse me, I had to take a drink. But yeah, I mean, look, Du Plessis is going to have the power advantage and Till's going to have the technical striking advantage. Du Plessis hasn't lost inside the UFC yet. He came into the UFC after that TKO win in the second round he came into the UFC after that guillotine choke submission in the first round at EFC 83 over Brendan Lesser. He lost to Roberto Soldic in the third round via KO TKO, but before that he knocked out Roberto Soldic back in the second round at KSW 43 in 2018. Since he's been in the UFC, he's on a 3-fight win streak, and 2 of those fights come by way of finish. He has that knockout victory over Marcus Perez, where Perez tried to go with a spinning elbow up against the cage, and Du Plessis caught him with a shot right on the ear, dropped him and knocked him out. Then he has that knockout victory over Trevin Giles, where he got hurt early on, but he bombed on him with a right hand as he got hurt. Giles had his hands down, chin up in the air, boom, bang right on the chin, knocked him out. And then the Tavares win was a war. I mean, they went back and forth, but he picked it up in the second, he picked it up in the third. The power, every time he landed on Tavares, like, it was hurting him the longer the fight went. But early on, he was open for so many counters against Tavares. I mean, the left hook was landing, the right hand was landing. He was constantly catching him with counters, and every time he was hitting him, he was stopping him in his tracks. But, Du Plessis is so explosive. He has so much power. He's like a war machine. I mean, the guy just comes forward and he's like a blitzkrieg and a buzzsaw. He's just going to try to throw power into everything that he throws. Is he open for counters? Yes. But does he have a lot of power, and can he knock just about anybody out? Yeah, I think he does. He doesn't look the best technically. He kind of freezes up when shots get thrown at him and overreacts, with his head movement and stuff. Kind of like a Khabib. Whenever he would get strikes thrown at him, he'd kind of pick his chin up in the air and block with the rear hand and kind of like freak out a little bit whenever the shots were coming at him, especially early in his career. I see the same thing from Du Plessis in the way that he defends a lot of these shots. Like, he'll pull his head out of the way, he'll try to back up, but his high guard and stuff isn't the best. He doesn't have the best defense because he's throwing so hard and he's extending so far into these shots that he leaves his chin up in the air to get countered. Against a guy in Darren Till, who, it's kind of a sad story for Till in the UFC. I mean, he's not the best in terms of his recent record, but man, I mean, he came into the UFC and he was on a tear, dude. He's got 18 victories, 4 losses. 3 out of those 4 losses come by way of finish, 2 submission losses, 1 by KO, TKO. He got knocked out by Jorge Masvidal, and then he got submitted by Tyron Woodley and Derek Brunson, which was his last fight. And then out of his 18 victories, he's got 12 wins by way of finish, 10 by KO, TKO, 2 by submission, and 6 via decision, 1 draw overall in his professional MMA career. But lately, I mean, since he suffered his first loss in professional MMA, he's 1-4 in the UFC. Prior to that, I mean, he was an undefeated fighter. He was going on a tear in the UFC, but he got submitted by Woodley in the second round of his title fight at UFC 228. He got knocked out in the second round over Jorge Masvidal, where he rushed in with that fake stance switch from orthodox to southpaw, but then he came back into orthodox and cracked him with an overhand right, knocked him out cold. He came back and fought Kelvin Gastelum and won a decision. It was a split decision, but I definitely think Till won that fight. It was close, but he fought the style of fight that he wanted to, and he won. He came back, fought Robert Whittaker, had a close fight, dropped Whittaker with an elbow, a step-in elbow. Whittaker dropped him with a right hand, that darting in right hand that Whittaker likes to throw. It was back and forth. The Whittaker fight was very competitive. It could have been, I think it was 3-2 for Robert Whittaker. So maybe you could have given it to Till if Whittaker wouldn't have got that knockdown, but a very close and competitive fight against Robert Whittaker at UFC on ESPN 14 back in July of 2020. And then after that, he came back in September of 2021 and lost via third round submission to Derek Brunson. And so the decision loss to Whittaker, the knockout loss to Masvidal, the submission loss to Woodley, and then the submission loss to Brunson. I think Du Plessis is live for a submission here. Like I said, I mean, he's got a lot of submissions on his record, and if Till leaves that neck out there, then he could get submitted. But you have to look at Darren Till's recent training camps and stuff. Like, he hasn't looked great, but he's getting into shape. He's training out there in Sweden with Khamzat Chimaev at All Stars. I mean, he's got one of the best grapplers in MMA in his camp. So if Darren Till's takedown defense, if his wrestling, if his distance control hasn't gotten better, then I don't know what he's been doing out there with Chimaev, but I expect to see better takedown defense. I think we might see some clinch trips from Darren Till because Du Plessis is kind of all over the place with the way that he explodes and moves. He might time him, get him in the over-under clinch, or get him in the single collar or the tie plum and use some inside or outside trips to try to take down Du Plessis. But I don't think we're going to see Till really resort to the wrestling because Du Plessis is such a submission threat, even though we haven't really seen it in the UFC. He has submissions on his record. He's gotten multiple submission victories. And if they get into a scramble, I could see Du Plessis getting a submission against Darren Till. I could 100% see it. I mean, you look at the stats overall with Du Plessis versus Till. We'll pull it up right now. You're going to have a 74.5-inch reach for Till to a 76-inch reach for Du Plessis. Even though Du Plessis has the 1.5-inch reach advantage, I think Till dictates the range and uses his reach better because he doesn't overextend on too many of his punches, and he uses more of his footwork when it comes to dictating the range, when Du Plessis just uses long strides and movements and stance changes and really darts in with his punches and explodes to try to land those bombs on your chin. So the better manager of range is Till, even though it says that Du Plessis has the bigger reach. Till's going to be using it better than Du Plessis will, and we're going to see Till be dictating the range in this fight if it stays at that distance. Leg reach, 42-inch leg reach for Till, 43-inch leg reach for Du Plessis. 1-inch height advantage, 6'1" for Dricus to 6 feet for Darren Till. Till coming off a loss like we already talked about. Du Plessis coming off the decision win over Brad Tavares. When you look at win percentages, 56% of the wins come by way of KO TKO for Till, 11 by submission, and 33% via decision. Du Plessis, on the other hand, he's got 100% of his wins coming by way of finish. I mean, out of 18 victories, he's got 1 win by way of decision. The rest are finishes in his whole entire career. I mean, 44% of the wins by way of KO TKO, 56% of the wins, almost a 60% win rate via submission. And that's why I think Du Plessis could be live for a submission here. But Till just with his chin up in the air, Du Plessis with his chin up in the air, man, this is a close fight. This is honestly a pick 'em in my opinion. Average fight time, 13 minutes, 41 seconds for the Gorilla Darren Till to 8 minutes and 21 seconds for Dricus Du Plessis. Looking at the fight overall, look, if Till's able to keep that outside foot on Du Plessis and southpaw against the orthodox fighter, he's going to be able to dictate the fight, like the left kick to the body, the front kicks, the straight left hand, the right hooks, stepping to the outside foot, constantly angling off. If it's a technical striking battle, then Till's going to win that fight. You know, that's the style of fight. The counters of Till are going to be there because Du Plessis keeps his chin in the air. You know, the outside footwork, the movement, that's going to be there for Till if he can fight at that range. But Du Plessis explodes. He explodes in with stance-switching combinations, the straight rights, the straight lefts, the body kicks, the overhands, the hooks, right hand, switch to southpaw, bang the left hook, 1-2, in orthodox, switch southpaw, bang the left hook, southpaw, straight left, right hook, switch back, right hook, left hook from orthodox. I mean, he switches his stances. He goes on awkward angles. Yeah, he's not the best defensively. Yeah, he rushes in, and that's going to be a recipe for disaster against Till. But Till just hasn't really looked himself, and I really don't have the faith. I don't have the faith in Darren Till that I once did. I've picked him against Brunson. I picked him to beat Woodley. I mean, I've picked him in so many fights, and he just continues to let me down. And I picked him against Kelvin Gastelum, and he got the job done there. I picked him against Whitaker. I believe I might have picked Whitaker in that fight. I think I picked Whitaker. I'm going to be honest. I think I picked Whitaker. I'm not 100% sure. You could go back and check the podcast. Tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I know that Till is going to be the more technical guy. I know Till is going to manage range better. I know Till's going to be the sharper, crisper striker on the feet. But the power of Du Plessis, the ability to throw himself into the fire, eventually he's going to get burned, but I just don't have the faith that Till is going to be the guy to do it at this point in his career. Yes, he's been training with Chimaev. Yes, he's been out at All-Stars. Yes, he's probably worked on his wrestling, worked on his striking, got into better shape, got better technically, but he's also been on a long layoff. I mean, look, the last time the guy was consistently active, we'll pull it up real quick. The last time he was consistently active was when he lost to Tyron Woodley. I mean, he fought one time. Let's see, how many times in 2018? He fought twice in 2018, twice in 2019, once in 2020, and once in 2021. So from 2020 to 2022, Till will only have had 3 fights, 1 fight per year. I just think it's time where the division is going to pass him by. I thought Derek Brunson was a tailor-made matchup for Till to get back on track, and he hurt him at one point, couldn't get the finish, got taken down over and over, and eventually got submitted. I just think Du Plessis is too much. I think he's a better grappler. I think he has more power on the feet. I think even though Till has the better technical ability and the better ability to get the outside foot and really throw his punches and, use that technical striking and time Du Plessis coming in with a push-pull, kind of like we talked about with Chris Curtis earlier. I think Till's going to be open for the counters, and I think he's going to get dropped and knocked out by Dricus Du Plessis. I could see a submission on the side of Du Plessis in this fight as well. He got submitted by Brunson. I could see Du Plessis catching him, dropping him, jumping on him, and taking his neck in a rear naked choke and getting a submission. I think he's very live for a submission. Whatever the line is, I mean, I'm not going to tell you that that's the best bet on the fight, but I think Du Plessis by submission is 100% a possibility. You look at the line for this fight in terms of odds, and you're going to have Du Plessis as a slight favorite at a -140 to a +120 underdog for Till. I know a lot of people are going to be siding with Darren Till and are going to want to take the underdog shot. And this is a favorable matchup for him in terms of the striking game. So I could see why you want to do that. but I just don't think that's the side here. I think you have to take Du Plessis as a slight favorite. You have to take Du Plessis in this fight. I just don't have faith in Till anymore. His chin's always up in the air. He pulls away from a lot of shots. And although Du Plessis is the same way with his defense not really being there, his defense is kind of inconsistent or non-existent, I should say. I think the power of Du Plessis, the explosion, and the ability to fall back on the submission game and the grappling if it goes wrong for him on the feet. He can mix up his striking. He can mix up his takedowns. He's the more well-rounded fighter, and I just have to go with Dricus Du Plessis here to get the win. I'm going to go with Du Plessis via finish. I'm going to go with Dricus still knocks Du Plessis to get a knockout victory over Till. I could see the submission, but I just think Till's chin's going to be up in the air when Du Plessis lands one of those bombs. I mean, he knocked out Trevin Giles, knocked out Marcus Perez. He hurt Tavares multiple times in the fight and survived getting hurt by Tavares, who's one of the best middleweights in the world, even though he's kind of fallen off as of recently. I got to go with Du Plessis to just find that chin of Darren Till on one of those lunging straight rights or straight lefts. And knock out Darren Till. I'm going to go with a second round knockout for Du Plessis. Like, I think if Till fights, technically, if he keeps that outside foot, stays at the range he wants to, and can avoid the explosions and counter Du Plessis as he rushes in, then yeah, he can win. But I just don't have faith in Darren Till at this point. I was a big Darren Till fan. Like I said, I picked him to beat Woodley for the title. I thought this guy was going to be, one of the best guys in that division at welterweight. And then he moves up to middleweight. I thought that was going to be a better weight class for him because he had terrible weight cuts. And he had some decent performances, like the performance against Gastelum. Even though he lost to Whitaker, it was a decent win. But a decent performance from him. But I just can't pick him, man. I can't side with Till at this point. And even though he's better technically, Du Plessis just has too many avenues to win this fight. And I got to go with Du Plessis to get the knockout. So when you look at the betting line, Du Plessis is a minus 140 to plus 120 for Darren Till. Like, we already talked about it a little bit, but I like Du Plessis on the money line at minus 140. I'm not like huge into betting this fight because I could see, him getting countered by Till with his chin up in the air, getting dropped and getting finished. Like, it's a close fight, don't get me wrong. I don't love this fight from a betting perspective. I would say the best bet overall, like, depending on what the line is, if it's anywhere like minus 200 and under, you would play fight doesn't go the distance, because I don't necessarily think it's going to go all 15 minutes. I think we'll get a finish on either side, but I got to side with Du Plessis. But best bet overall in terms of the betting perspective would be the fight doesn't go the distance. Then I would play probably Du Plessis on the money line, and then maybe Du Plessis via submission. I could see him getting a submission, and I feel like the line's going to be juicy. Like, I could see Till giving up his neck and getting subbed by Du Plessis. So the third best bet and the sneaky bet for this fight would be Du Plessis to win via submission. I'm going to go by knockout, which is why I said money line's like the best. But I like the submission line. Like, I could see it definitely happening. But my pick is going to be Dricus Du Plessis to defeat Darren Till via second round knockout.